Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you very much again. You have all the thanks. Where did you go? Here you are. Okay. For inviting me again and again and again. It sounds like the Templeton paper, you know, from ages ago about Homo sapiens coming out of Africa again and again and again. I often think of you, you know, when I climb up the tower of the University of Haifa, I look west. I don't see even Cyprus. It doesn't matter, but I can kind of imagine this beautiful cliff and all these Neanderthals, fellow Neanderthal, and you wave. Yeah, I tell you. Okay. Thanks, Arella. Where is she now? I think my lecture is redundant, almost. You have focused on the Levant. I'm going to focus on Mount Carmel. And I bet by the time I finish, you'll be more confused. I'm confused. And I think maybe after John gives his view of the lithics and things, you'll be even more confused. And I think this is the idea. We are researchers. We should keep on researching. We are not paid to find anything. We just pose new models, new ideas, and that's how science goes, and it's only nature. So we were talking about, I modified, by the way, the PowerPoint a little bit after the discussions we had yesterday on the site, etc. I wished I could have time to modify it after the presentations today, but it's too late, I guess. So this is the Mount Carmel Cave Cliff, or Wadi Me'arot, Nachal Me'arot, or Wadi El-Mrara, which means actually the valley of the cave in Arabic, but Gerald, knowing that there are more caves, kind of played a little bit with the name, and she calls it the Valley of the Caves after digging in Tabun. If you look here, there is no way Tabun is not a cave. Ups, God, that's how it's done. Oh, איך אומרים? Okay. Okay. Well, in 2 hours, I don't know how to use it. Okay, Tabun is on the right. It wasn't a cave. It's a collapsed cave. No one knew it was a cave. Gerald came to dig actually at El Wad. It was in 1928 when the British, with the British mandate we weren't in dependent territory, we were a mandate. They wanted to build a port in Haifa. So they had, we'll have an easy access to the oil fields in Iraq, which means nothing is changed. It's the same interest everywhere all the time. And they were looking for a nice quarry for storms, for the water breaker. And they found this beautiful quarry, natural quarry. But there was a very energetic head of the Department of Antiquities named Richmond, and he said, okay, you can blow it away, but first I want to do a trial excavation. And they did a trial excavation at El Wad, where they found a Natufian culture, which is out of the scope of this paper, of this talk, but that's where Gerald was asked to come and dig, because she was the most competent archaeologist at the time, after digging here in France and in Kurdistan, etc. And one afternoon, I guess she went actually one afternoon to Kebara and dug a trench, 12 meters by 12 meters to the Natufian, so I don't know, only one afternoon. And I guess one afternoon she started to scratch at Tabun. And then after 5 years, she became this section that you'll see later, which is 25 meters of sediments. But there's no way she could know it was a collapsed cave. We know better now because of her experience. When we saw Misliya, we realized it was collapsed right away. But of course, we built on her experience. By the way, a lesson in Hebrew. In Hebrew, legared means to scratch. And we think that her name wasn't Gerald before, but she was given this name after scratching so far. So this is this cliff, and we were subscribed in 2012, and it's a great experience, I can tell you. Especially meeting people knowing you are not used to meet, because it's all these local communities, people from the nature reserves and others, and it's all good people, and I recommend the process. Will I learn? I give up. Okay, some of you know this slide, but still what happens, there are 4 caves at the same cliff. The distance between Tabun and Schul is 200 meters. I don't think they're separate sites. Now they're separate. Sometimes you need a visa to go from one site to another, but I think for prehistoric groups it was one site, and they have used whatever was available. And altogether we have a sequence of at least 500,000 years, starting with Tabun at the bottom, and with the Lower Paleolithic and the Middle Paleolithic, and then El Wad taking the lead when Tabun collapsed. And the cave was used even yesterday by Shepard. So, I mean, it's a long, very long, continuous use of a site throughout prehistory and, and also historic time. And it's a site important because of the human evolution, of course, and you can see easily that at Tabun, we have this Neanderthal lady. You see it's a lady, and you see she's still optimistic, so she's Neanderthal probably. And then we heard from Arella, we have the same time roughly, we have some Homo sapienses, or what we conveniently call anatomically modern humans, so we are not obliged to anything. I mean, we can do with it what we want. So the site has been important for all this biological and cultural evolution at first, behavioral evolution, and then at the end, of course, we are Homo sapienses. You can't tell it when you look at the news, but still we are all Homo sapienses. And from school on, we have only this cultural evolution, as Raila mentioned just a while ago. It's a single site, I say. For me, it's a single site. I bet for the people. So the site was inscribable because of 3 criteria or 3 outstanding universal value. It's the long cultural sequence, the importance for human evolution. It's the earliest burial sites to date, by the way, because of the Natufian culture, which ends it, and it's already on the threshold of agriculture. It's about 15 or even more thousand years ago now. And because of the history of archaeological research, because the site has been excavated since 1928, much like here, and we keep researching. So each new method, each new aspect that can be studied, etc., it's all brought into the site, so you can learn actually the history of archaeological research. And the gossip about people, you know, it's much more interesting sometimes than finding, you know, dry bones. You know. So to give it in more detail, there are many technological developments. There are various human types, mainly what we call early anatomical moderns and Neanderthals. There are changes in ways of life. We've been, all of us, most of our lives, hunter-gatherers. We should remember that. And only now we became so wise because of agriculture and other processes. Of course, there are a lot of environmental fluctuation because it's a very long sequence. And all you ever wanted to learn about these things, please come to us. Something which is important, especially for the students, the prompt publication. Garrett finishes to dig at 1934, and the first volume of the Stone Age of Mount Carmel was published in 1937, which is a minute later. And it's one, I think, of the most cited books, apart of the Bible. Yeah? And there's this, I don't know if it's funny, a joke at the university, Israeli university, that God wanted to get tenure. People didn't accept him because he has only one major publication, and it's in Hebrew. So this one is not in Hebrew, and it's, yeah, well, and 90 years of research. And I think we don't talk about it now, but it's relevant for many stakeholders, not only prehistorians. It's a rocky striff. It's a cliff that goes all along, we'll see it in a minute, all along the coast of Mount Carmel. And you see the caves there. It's also kind of a landmark. And the sites of these and Kabara and Misliya, all the sites that we will be talking about, all sit on this cliff. Actually, it's wise people. They sit on Mount Carmel, but it's like the hotels in, like Caleta Hotel. They sit on the terraces overlooking the sea, but they're not in the mud, in the marshes there. They're just overlooking the coast. And then they're in a kind of what we call ecotonal setting, and they use the mountains, they have the little rivers, and we have evidence that they were using the sea, the marshes. We have very good flints in Israel and very good salt, very good, resources, very useful for modern life, but still. And of course, the vegetal food we were talking about, like acorns and cereals and a lot of legumes, also in Middle Paleolithic times, as Ella showed us, and of course the hunted animals. Why go from there? You said it may be a refugium. I don't know. When you live in it, it's not a refugium. It's the center place. So I don't know. It depends where you come from. And people, as you showed, could live there forever because there was no better place to go, even when climate, especially when the climate deteriorated. And the sea, of course, went up and down. This is only 150,000 years, but it went up and down again. And when it came up and down, and you can see the coast today, but then depending on the, the topography of underwater topography, on the bathymetric arrangement, near the Mount Carmel, we had 10 kilometers more of a coast. And El Wad, these are, by the way, all the sites. Actually, I can see it. Kebar is the southernmost, then you have Tabun and Schul, Nachal Oren and Misliya. They're all within 40 kilometers, maybe, from each other. And if you look at what we reconstructed for El Wad, that is now about 45 meters above sea level, during the last glacial maximum, and even a bit later, these people had 14 kilometers of coast. Now they have only 4.5. And the cave was even higher. And there are a lot of marshes and things and little frogs and other things they could have used. And we have all these changes. You know it well here in Gibraltar. There are changes in the landscape. It's not only in climate, but the landscape is changing all the time. And it influences also the things they can hunt, etc. I thought about it because of you, because when you come to Gibraltar, it's not only the caves, it's a landmark. It's something you remember. It's something people tell you about. There's this, I don't know, serrated, something mounted. Go, one day you'll find it. Or we came from there. I don't know. I don't want to be too romantic about these people, but I think there was something. There should have been something. And this is a landmark with all these caves. And the site was inhabited for so long because some of the caves collapsed, like in Misliya, and were deserted, but some are still caves until today. El Wad goes into the mountain about 90 meters. So even if it will collapse eventually, still there is a very large cave. So I think it's kind of, I don't want to say, well, that it's really prehistoric man's castle, but I don't know, maybe it won't. And I just decided to play a little bit with this, so you can see even the guard up there. And who knows? And I like to look at Nachal Me'arot sequence as a hat hanger. So they have this hat hanger, and the whole sequence is there. But then you can hang shorter sequences on top of this. So Misliya would be, let's see, this coat, because it starts with the early Paleolithic and Middle Paleolithic. Kabara maybe would be a bit shorter, and we'll go further on. And then Kashish, because it's an open-air site, you need a Panama head, so it would be somewhere here. And I don't know, Rakefet, a Natufian site, and so on. And this I put for Trump because it doesn't acknowledge global warming. So we have a series of submerged sites. So it's an homage to him. And this could be a basis for a serial nomination, actually, because all of Mount Carmel could be prehistoric world of I don't know what, and maybe all of Israel, because as Ariella told us, the distance between Tabun and Amud is, I don't know, 50 kilometers. I mean, it's a one-day's walk. I mean, it's nothing. So it's, in a way, all this Mediterranean area is one land, you know, of these people. People utilize the caves to historic times. This is a wall built, people don't know, but either in Hellenistic or Byzantine times, and used also in Crusaders' times, as you can see. Sorry, this is the last one. And caves often were regarded like maybe holy places. In many caves there are springs, in many caves there are temples, kind of. And here, I'm sorry I didn't find it, it was Gerard who found it, but look at this beautiful Aphrodite. So it's Hellenistic. And it was there not because it's an important Natufian site. It was there because, you know, it had a meaning. I don't know what, I don't know to which site it related, but still the caves are kind of mysterious for other people as well. Okay, so one of the main criteria, or the meeting place or meeting area between Neanderthals and modern humans, and Neanderthals or early modern humans, and the story says that Neanderthals came from Europe and anatomically modern humans from Africa. And we always ask, did they meet? I guess they met, but who knows? What tells us that they met? I don't know, because the dating is plus minus 20,000 always. So, you know, you can live married like this forever if somebody comes. You know, you live in different towns and you meet, I don't know when. But I guess they met because of all, we have to trust the real scientists, the DNA people. And they said that there was some interrogation of genes, so apparently they met. If you look at my skin, they met. Okay, so when? I don't know, 70,000, 80,000, 100,000 years ago, I don't know. And another question was, or is still, who was before they met, or who was here before the Neanderthals, before these early anatomically modern humans. So if now we go to serious business and we go to the Middle Paleolithic of the Levant, and you can see the sites of the Middle Levantine Middle Paleolithic are between 250,000 and 45,000 years ago. But human remains until Misliya were known from 100, 120,000 to 50,000. So only the upper part of the Middle Paleolithic, we knew who the people were, or maybe we thought we knew who the people were. And we, as we heard, we have both Neanderthals and Homo sapienses. So these are, I don't know how, even without talking to Rella, for me, Homo sapienses are blue, and the Neanderthals are kind of more reddish. I don't know why. We have to research into that. But you see that the Neanderthals are later, and the Homo sapiens are earlier. We heard about it from Rella. There is very early Middle Paleolithic Tahirnim. We don't know who the humans are. There's some teeth, but they're not studied yet. And actually, that's why we started Misliya, because it was clear from the surface already that we have or may have this passage between the Lower Paleolithic and Middle Paleolithic. And if we find human remains, then, of course, we'll know who were the humans that were here before. This is Mount Carmel. And the heroes, only the Mount Carmel ones. So this is the Tabun Neanderthal. We call her lady because respect to Gerald, of course. She must be a lady. She's friends with the Gibraltar guy, both in London now, you know. So this friendship started many years ago, I guess. They're both in London. And they say she's a Neanderthal. I don't know, there's some anthropologists who would argue that she's not really a Neanderthal. We call them Levantine Neanderthals, so we are not, you know, there are all kinds. Some people have said that she's too delicate to be a real Neanderthal, but she's considered a Neanderthal. And then we have the people from Schul. This guy, Schul 4, is now in the Rockefeller Museum, saved from the British, but all the others are gone. And this is Schul 5. I don't know how right all this scenario is, but as Ella told us, you cannot really differentiate on the basis of tools, whether Neanderthals made them, or Homo sapiens made them, or early anatomically modern humans made them, or Levantine Neanderthals made them. And because we have to be smarter, because we are Homo sapiens, and we are Homo sapiens because we give the names, I don't think anybody else would call us Homo sapiens. People argue that maybe Homo sapiens have some more advanced or developed symbolic behavior, and this is based on this burial from, again, I'm not a Homo sapiens, I guess, okay. The burial from Schol, you can see that maybe there are offerings of some kind of Joe, and the ochre we saw before, and the beads we saw before. So maybe, just maybe, these early Homo sapiens had a more developed symbolic behavior. Again, the same yardstick of Tabun. It's a yardstick for Levantine prehistory because it was dug first, of course, and of course because it's the longest thing. And if you look at it, you see that there are some human remains in the late Lower Paleolithic. There are some teeth from Kesem that have some kind of a mixture between Neanderthal and more archaic human forms. They are not Homo sapienses. This Zutia person, I don't know when it was found, it was Neanderthal. Later it became Homo erectus. Later it became archaic Homo sapiens. Now some people call it pre-Neanderthal. I don't know. maybe in future developments of research, we can, ask them where did it come from. I don't know, but so far it's a bit. And as we saw before, we have tabun 1 and the skull, and tabun 2, the mandible level I was talking about. And again, tabun 2 is Homo sapiens, tabun 1, the lady, is Neanderthal, and skull are Homo sapiens. It's all within this site already. So again, the Neanderthals are later. Tabun 1, we don't know. Some people argue she's old, like Gerard probably. Some people think she would fit better with the latest Neanderthals. So like Bar Yosef, and on the basis of some archive research, he put her in B. I don't know. We will never know where she came from exactly. I had the idea of having a marionette show, calling her the woman of Tabun, and she will be going up and down the layers, and she will be dated by different methods, but we'll never know where she came from. There's no way one can dig a site again. We can argue, we can discuss, but we'll never, unfortunately, know where she came from. So either she's late or she's maybe before these Hulenkopfs and Neanderthals, and the Tabun to Joe, again, a Homo sapien. So this is the Tabun. If, by the way, she's old, then, as Zarella said, we'll have Homo sapiens and then Neanderthals and then Homo sapiens and then Neanderthals. So we have all these waves of people coming. We still don't know. So again, we decided to dig at Misliya because it had this passage between the Lower and Middle Paleolithic, because it had Early Middle Paleolithic, and we thought it would be interesting to know who was there. And because it was never dug before, which was nice, but also a very harsh, I think it's a responsibility, because it's easy to dig at a site that was dug before. Gerard did all the disaster, you just, but when you are the first one to cut, then the whole responsibility is yours. There's nobody to hide. And anyway, so at the bottom we have this Acheulo-Yabrudian or late Lower Paleolithic industries. And then at the end of the Misliya sequence, we have Middle Paleolithic. And we still didn't know who the humans were. We thought one question, and maybe John will remark on that, would be interesting to show or to know whether changes in culture are related to changes in human species. I think Ella also touched upon it, because the Lower Paleolithic is very different from the Middle Paleolithic, as we saw. And we thought that anyway it would be interesting here, because it would shed some more light, still very obscure situation of the relationships between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. So this is Misliya Cave. It's a collapsed cave. It collapsed at the end of the Early Middle Paleolithic. And on the surface, it's about 90 meters above sea level. And we have Tabun D-type industries, or Early Middle Paleolithic industries, or Early Levantine Mousterian, whatever you want to call it, on the surface. Unlike many other caves in the area that were used by shepherds, so you have under a 1 meter layer of goat sheets, all this historic stuff. Here it's clean, it's just on the surface because it's too high. It wasn't a cave, nobody used it, so for us it was really great. And there are some topographic terraces, probably related to chambers that were collapsing before. And on the lower terrace, we found this Acheulo-Yabrudian, or late Lower Paleolithic. Something strange on this middle terrace. We don't know what it is yet. It's so brecciated that I invite you to come and dig if you want, but things are broken and you can't do anything with them. And this Early Middle Paleolithic on the upper terrace. And like reasonable people, we dug, we looked for things under the lamp, as they say, the street lamp. This part of the cave, there's relatively soft sediments because it's under the roof, under the overhang. So that's where we dug, because there we didn't break the stones and the bones, etc. But you never know where the burial is. It could be in the breccia, So you don't dig the whole site. Now people don't dig whole sites. We just, sample them and leave them for the next generations. They'll have better methods, of course. But that's where we dug, and that's where we could extract the material. Now, the late Lower Paleolithic, or Acheulo-Yabrudain, the site is dated to between 280 to 250,000 years ago, and the Early Middle Paleolithic, 240 to 160. So the passage between that was around, I don't know, 250, 245 in the afternoon. You put it where you want, but somewhere around 250,000 is the go, which suits the other sites, or most of the other sites as well. And now if you look at this, I'll do quickly because it's all lithics, but I'll do it quickly for the sake of some of the people, but don't worry. So if you look at the Lower Paleolithic industry, it's mostly flakes, very little tools, some handexes, and there's many, many side scrapers. As we'll see, many of them are Quina-like. They have very, very thick flakes, Quina-retouched flakes, and most of the tools are side scrapers, almost like a Quina site, you would say. They are very fine handexes. They were made, and also the other tools were made of nodules, kind of convex nodules. And sometimes you can see the original shape of the nodules. They are very flat kind of nodule. And they didn't pay attention much to the bat, you know, maybe intentionally because you can hold it. You don't have to really retouch it. It's much more comfortable. But the tops, you know, the spitz, they are very fine. They're very nicely retouched, very nicely done. They're very, very fine. Handexes totally different from the ones we have in the Lower Paleolithic or in the Acheulian. There's a nice thing that you have a kind of a transgression, if you want, between two handexes to this, you see scrapers. You find them, when you find them, you think it's a handexes, you turn it over, and it's finally a Quina scraper. So it's all one of the same kind of a method. And if you look at the Middle Paleolithic industry, it's totally different. What you see is there are layers about 1.5 meters deep. In some places, there are even more, 4 meters deep. Above either a rockfall or the bedrock, we don't know. We suspect it's both in part. And you can see already one of the hearths emerging, I think, here. I don't know if you see that there's a hearth there. You have to believe me. And this is one of the deep holes. You can see it's hard to dig. It's a breccia. I mean, it's as if he was digging his own grave. I don't know. It's kind of it's 1 meter. And this is the soft sediments and the breccia on the other side. The site is extremely rich in lithics. We have studied so far more than 60,000 pieces larger than 2.5 centimeters. It's a torture. It never ends. And it's very, very rich, even if you think about deflation and other things, because it can be, this site is the only one that was deflated and all the others were. And if this is what you see, and if you look at the square meter, you see the black ones are flints. Most of them are local. They come from less than 1 kilometer. There are very, very good outcrops of flints there, and many animal bones as well. A sample we took, you look at this one. It's a flaky industry, as Rela said, but the blade component is very, very high, and it becomes higher when you look at all these naturally backed knives and all other things. It has this bladey appearance, and many of the flakes and the short points are kind of elongated. They're not blades, but they're elongated. It has this Cro-Magnonian-like image of an industry, if you want. And you can see that from the kind of orange stuff that many of the 42% of the stuff has this blade proportion, which is totally different from what we had before in the Lower Paleolithic, and it's different from what we have in the later Middle Paleolithic. This is a different industry. I don't know if it's related to human species or not, but it's totally different from what happened before and what was later on in this part of the world. Okay, all of them. Now, the end products are Levallois points, and Levallois actually arrived with this early Middle Paleolithic, or the full-fledged Levallois, as it were, arrived with these Misliya people. Levallois flakes and many, many of these blades. Now, just for you, some of the points, they are unidirectional convergent, most of them. Striking platforms are usually faceted along the whole sequence of striking, all the striking sequence, so they did the faceting on site from the start. So it's the same with the points, it's the same with the flakes. I can show people, if you're interested later, more of this. We have two kinds of blades. Some of them are Levallois blades. Others come from a more laminar kind of a system. So these are the Levallois, and these are the more laminar concepts, much as we find in Ionim and in Carmel in the area. By the way, many of these pointed flakes and blades are kind of wide and flat at the proximal end and become very abrupt at the distal end, already coming out like this from the preparation or from the striking, as Rella said. But unlike what Rella said for the later Lower Paleolithic, many of them are retouched, and many of them are beautifully retouched. So there is some difference in that as well. You can see this also in the cores themselves. And also the cortical elements are also kind of, to keep the convexity for the Levallois, kind of blading in proportions. The tools are mostly points. Many of them, again, are on blades or elongated points. Many of them are on thick points from these laminar production, and they are beautifully, almost like origination retouch, if you want. And I think many of them I would put in a museum. They are very, very, very nicely made. We are talking about prehistoric art. For me, this is prehistoric art. You don't need drawings on walls. This is, each specimen here is an art piece for me. So there is a very marked difference between the Acheulo-Yabrudian and the Early Levantine Mousterian. It's totally different. It's different not only in Misliya, or not only in Mount Carmel. It's what we have with this Early Levantine Mousterian we didn't have before, especially these points and full-fledged Levallois. It appeared that they arrived in the area, I don't know from where, with all this, equipped with all this technology. And we are still kind of hacked or attached to these African sources. So we think they came from maybe some population in Africa where they used to have these points much earlier than they find them in the Levant. But of course, we don't know. So there's a huge diversity of napping techniques, and it seems that we have this conceptual change with the emergence of this Levallois technology, evolved Levallois technology. Now, these people hunted animals, and you can see a series of animals coming to visit the site if you want. Bones are very well preserved. Most of the hunted animals are fellow deers. There are many mountain gazelles, but there are others, also aurochs, in spite of the fact that the cave is 90 meters above sea level. So I don't know, sometimes people want to show that they kind of hunted an auroch, so they bring the head or something, I don't know. But also very small little animals, you know. It was like a French restaurant in a way. And we didn't find the ostrich, but only ostrich shells. So you can envisage an omelet in the morning, I don't know. So, I don't know. So it was quite a varied diet. And they did all the butchering and everything at the site. As you can see from these marks and cut marks. And you see this rib, you can still eat it almost, and very, very well preserved for marrow extraction and other roasting and other activities. They weren't stupid. Even though they carried the aurochs, you know, the gazelles were brought whole to the site because they're not so heavy. And the Mesopotamian rodi was cut in the field and then brought to the site because they are kind of heavier. We think that many of the animals were hunted using these projectile points, usually on Levallois points, because of these impact fractures that we found there. And Ala Yaroshev has kind of reconstructed all kinds of possible hafting techniques. We are still looking at hafting possibilities, and we see them in the useWare. It's going to be published soon. So apparently Levallois points were used for hunting, but when we did the useWare analysis on the other very nicely retouched points, they were mostly used for vegetal processing. So they were used as scrapers. sometimes also hafted because it makes it easy to use. But there's very rare height processing. Most of them were used for vegetal processing, which was a surprise, actually. Why create such beautiful tools if you're just going to scrape it? But still. Again, we found many phytolites. No pollen preserved. This is a punishment for me because I'm originally a palynologist, so no pollen. And sometimes we see, as you can see here, pieces of wood. We can still see the cells. It's in micromorphology. We cannot identify the wood species, but still they were using wood. And there was a series of hearths at the site, some of them very thick, and people used again and again the same. The spatial arrangement of finds was the same and the same for a very long period of time. It was recurrent for a very long period of time. You see one of these, and the one that Ariella shows before. It's still hot. If you touch it, it's almost, it's so well preserved. And in the micromorphology, the one on the left, we saw these signs of kind of vegetal material, stripes of vegetal material that we think are signs of bedding. So now, because it's old, it becomes the first bedding, or the first evidence of bedding, because even birds do bedding. It's not something Homo sapiens did, but still it's a very early example of such a bedding. So if we summarize, and this is from all the PowerPoints, so the numbers will be different, so okay, never mind. So we have this Levallois system of napping, if you want, for Levallois points and blades and other things. And are broad and thin and faceted, and they resemble things found in Tabun, the Negev sites. And we have this laminar system for these long and more kind of thick, abuzif, we call them, points, which we found also in Hayonim and Khumar. So there are at least two traditions that normally we find in other sites. And this variability is a kind of connecting. I don't want to say, I do say it's a kind of a site where everybody came, of course, and made their tours. I don't know if it was a regional site for everybody, but it has sites of the same traditions, normally separated in other sites, or whatever that means, I don't know. And it was suggested, I think, by Ariella, no, I forget to cite it, that we have this residential mobility with the late Levantine site. And maybe it started only then, because then you have these signs for repeated use of the same areas for similar activities, but based on Misliya, it seems that it started even before. And also based on the amount of flints that you have. If you see here how many flints, again, larger than 2.5 centimeters, we have per cubic meter, and you see that it's thousands of them. And we have 30,000 artifacts for 10 cubic meters. You do the math. In Hayonim, it's 300 for the same amount of sediment. At Tabun, it's 2,000 for the same amount of it. So this is a much richer site, even if you do all kinds of deflation and all of post-depositional calculations. I don't know, it's still a richer site than the others. And Barasev said that Hayonim, it must have been ephemeral because you don't have so many tools. So then Misliya is not. And in Tabun, it's the same. So, of course, it's a key site because I'm digging it, so it's always, our sites are always key site. And it's important anyway because of the size of the lithic and faunal assemblage, the repeated constructions of hearths, the spatial recurrent activities and the variability. And maybe it was some kind of a more residential site. But who are the people? We are still left with the question, who are the people? And how can we explain this jump between the Lower Paleolithic and the Middle Paleolithic? And I know it's not fashionable, but based on Misliya, I think that maybe there is a change in human species after all. But we'll see what John says later. And a piece of the answer came with the finding of this maxilla. It's very dramatic because I took the slides from Gerhard Weber, who is now presenting Misliya in the competing conference in Faro, so that's why the entrance is so rare. And it's a maxilla, unfortunately only the maxilla. Maybe the burial is in the brachiated part, or maybe that's all we have at the site, we don't know. And all the measurements we did, it's dated to 185, like between 177 and 194,000 years ago, so it's much earlier than all the others, or some of the others. And all measurements show that it's modern human, not anatomically modern human, but a modern human. The shape of the maxilla, the place where the zygomatic arch joins the maxilla, all kinds of measurements for the teeth. I can assure you, measured, as we say, every moving teeth ever in the world we were asked to measure, because maybe, I don't know what. And in all measurements, it's modern human. And when we just published it in January, many things happened since, but in January we thought that, of course, it's a modern human, most probably originating from Africa, because we don't know where else from, unless it was developing in Israel, in the Levant, who knows. It was then corroborated by then new ancient DNA studies suggesting that Homo sapiens started at least 220 years, 1,000 years ago. Now we know it's even earlier, so we have, as Ariella said, more time to play with. We thought that may explain the great variability of the later human remains, because when Misliya came here, this human came here probably with a group, I guess, not with one person. And they found people here because we have the sequence already. So maybe they interbreed, I don't know what, with the people that were here. And maybe this can explain why some of the later Middle Paleolithic people look more Neanderthals and others look more Homo sapiens. We don't know. We thought that it may explain how people reach China, so close to what was then the first humans in Schul and Kafza. And we thought it would be nice to say that it supports the northern route of expansion. Even now we know people just moved all over the place. They didn't buy tickets. They didn't know where they were going. Eventually they moved. I don't think they were going anywhere. But still, if there's an argument, we also engage in it. Why not? And we don't know if it's a male or a female. I decided that because we have 50% certainty that it's a woman, I think it's a lot in our science. So I decided it's a woman, and I think Misliya is a nice name for this person, whatever. Okay, and this I was given again by Gerhard Weber, and this was in 2016, what people thought or knew. So we had the first modern humans, in Homo, in Erto, etc., like almost 200,000 years ago. Then the people they knew before Hood were the same age, and some people went south. I don't see it, but where is it? Some people went south in Africa, others maybe went north to Schul, etc. And from there, it's based on the data we have. Tomorrow you'll find a new skeleton, and you'll just change the arrows. That's what we do. And we have to know it, and we have to admit it. That's the situation. But it's nice to play with it. So, and then the earliest people in China, and later people again moving from Africa to areas like Manot, and from Manot to Australia, probably. This is all a reconstruction, again, based on the data. And then go quickly. They don't move, these people. And then to Europe, of course. By the way, we once did an exercise, like how long it takes to go from Manot to Europe, to Italy, because I was in a conference in Italy. So if you do it in Google, and if you go 5 hours a day, not too much, in the evening you can meet your friends and family, it takes 3 months. Okay, so the world is small. Even then, people moved when they moved, went back when they went back, and then we see some general movement, but at the time maybe they weren't moving at all, or they didn't feel like moving. But since 1920, well, the Americas, We still have Herto and Homo in isotope stage 6. Now with Misliya. Where is Misliya? It's somewhere there. Now we know that there are earlier Homo sapienses, or maybe Homo sapienses, or archaic Homo sapiens, or almost Homo sapiens in 300,000 years in Morocco. There are others in Florisbad and in other places. So it gives us more time for Misliya to evolve, if you want, from some kind of population in Africa. We don't know where. And then we start to have the same movement. And I'll stop here. I'm not going to take you. If you believe this, they reached America already. You know, this was like transatlantic thing. So things are changing again based on the data. Move. Okay. And again, we were talking about Achiyad before. We are kind of storytellers. I'm a storyteller. You are a serious scientist. We can call it different, like model constructors, I don't know, based on the data. So there's a paper published lately by Sarah et al., dividing Africa, which is huge, into all kinds of territories that, based on these data, climatological data, could rarely meet each other. So they were all these isolated groups of people, probably. Again, based on the data, it's a story. I don't think we can. None of these could be the forefathers or foremothers of Misliya. So it doesn't help us much. And of course, in the Middle East, when everything is like within 50 kilometers, this cannot be an explanation because we're one on top of the other. So it doesn't help much. They had this idea, I don't know, I'm not an anthropologist, but the idea of face first sounds a bit Piltdownish to me. I don't know. The Iraq told us when we were very young that it doesn't believe in an evolution of parts of the skull. It all had to develop together. But okay, even if the face developed further, Yehud in 300,000, and then they put here still Misliya is more modern, so it doesn't help us to solve the enigma or the question of Misliya. I don't know myself, but it doesn't help much. So we are still I'm still very confused. So again, if we have the same scheme, not with all of them, now we have Misliya somewhere, then Tabul and Schul 5 that are Homo sapienses, Tabul 1 it is Neanderthal, Schul 4 from the same group is Neanderthal. We were talking about this varied population. It's not one kind of population. There's some mixture in each of the populations. Kafze 9 is Homo sapiens. Kafze 6 is more like a Neanderthal. I don't know what you do with that. I don't know how much they represent, because the dates are they may represent, I know, one catastrophic event, and still there'll be a mixed population. So again, what we know now doesn't help solve the problems. Misliya is there. We don't know where it came from. It's more modern than others. It's either mixed with others or not. We don't know because we don't have DNA, and you can write the story yourself. And I'm not the only one to be perplexed. And it started from the beginning. Keith realized that some of them are more modern than others. And McCown didn't know how to eat them, we say in Hebrew, because they didn't read the books of evolution at the time, and they weren't really complying with the human remains of Europe. Gerard herself, even about Tabul 1, she said she was very delicate. So maybe there's some gender things here. We're hearing about the pelvis in the morning. In Israel, at least, there's only one pelvis. And how can you do statistics with one pelvis? And again, Iraq said to me once, and I think we should all acknowledge that we have a very limited number of remains, finally, to go for such a long period of time. And we treat it, the group of remains we have, we treat it as a population. It's not even a sample. And we play on all kinds of statistics. And that's why each find changes everything, not because people are stupid, because each find kind of enlarge the arrays of the things we know, both chronologically and kind of anthropologically. So one way to go about it is to look at, try to get more of the context of things in the old collections and old sites. And again, there is no way to dig again, but just to get more information. And this is the way Dr. Boone, she divided it into 7 layers, and then both Ronen and Jelinek dug the same layers again, and you can see we have hundreds of layers. So we can have more details based on what they did if we compile the finds of Jelinek and of Ronen into one kind of file of things. Some of them are in the IA in Jerusalem, some of the material is in Haifa, some of the material is in Arizona. Nobody ever looked at the whole assemblages together, even though they were dug in, 25 years ago. So we are doing it now with Chimenowitz and Steve Kuhn, and we already have some results, and we'll have more, I guess. You can follow long processes at such size because you can isolate the location, the geographical aspect, the climatological aspect, because they're all at the same site, at the same location. So here we looked, for instance, at burnt flints, and you can see that at the bottom nothing is burnt, and then suddenly it's around 350,000 years ago, people started to use fire until today. And it's important because it's within the Acheulo-Yabrudian, and it's not a change of human species probably. It's the same industry, same hunted animals. One pyroman started to use fire, and then it caught, the fire caught it. So we have to think about these individual geniuses or disturbed people, I don't know, who may invent things within a culture or within a group or whatever. And what we do now, we compile the sequences of Jelinek's and Ronen excavations. This is by looking at the sequences and sampling them again and dating them again and doing all kinds of micromorphological work. We try to get more about the context of the finds. And with new excavation in Tabun B, we go through the chimney. I hope it's not going to be my last excavation because gravity, in Haifa is very strong. So we go from above through the chimney, and we find what people said before, that it may be a kind of trap for animals, many animal bones. Most of them, as they said before, are Dama Mesopotamica, or roe deers, and some nice points to go with them. But now at least we'll have all the multifaceted or multidisciplinary studies together, and maybe with the dating we'll get a better idea of what was going on. And this is how we sample everything. We can already say that Tabun, if you look at the micromorphology, if the sediments, the bottom of Tabun C with the Homo sapiens looks a bit different than the upper part of it with the Neanderthals, so maybe there's some kind of behavioral change that we'll eventually figure out based on these micromorphological studies. And when we date them, then we know better when things happen. We also went back to Schul, because there are many burials, there are 11 burials, and what we call some other spare parts, because when you read the report, there's a piece of bone here, the piece of bone there. People didn't dig as we dig now. So we don't know what the context of the burial, we don't nothing about the paleo environments, not much about the behavior of people at the site, and of course the dating is very general. What we realized when we looked at the sections of the cave, that now I understand what you see. These are McCall's excavations, and at northern part there is the dump, but underneath the dump apparently, or we thought we would find some in situ layers still, and we did. So you can see these are the in situ layers, and above them this huge dump of layers. It's not exactly an upright, a reverse stratigraphy, but still. And we are looking at what was dumped in the early excavations, and apparently they dumped a lot, and they took only the nice pieces. So this is a kind of a bias collection, which is also important to know. And of course, the in situ material. So this is the in situ. Above there, you see the dump at the right. And just if you look at the general breakdown, you can see that if you look at what we find in the drawers of the finds from Schul, that Gero divided all of the finds into 44 institutions around the world. And there's a list of these institutions in the first or second page of the introduction. So you can know exactly where to go. So if you look at what she found or McCown found, you see debitage is, for instance, less than 50%. We already see in our, in our part is 50%, but in the dump, it's much larger because they just threw away. They took the nice tools and they threw away all the debris. And you can see what we found in drawers around the world. We find all these nice Levallois points, I think similar to the ones Arella showed us before. Very many animal species were hunted, and this is a very, very preliminary count. And again, here you can see the bias, because if you look at what we find now, it's mostly Dama Mesopotamica, some aurochs, but you know, Schul is almost sea level, almost wadi level, so this would comply with Arella's theories. And if you look at McCown's collections and what Marina Arroyo did based on the teeth, she thought, or what they collected is mainly boss, mainly aurochs teeth. So Schul was known for the aurochs, but when you look at the real material, it's actually more evenly separated between other animals. So we have to dig again, or to look at the things again, and again, something comes out as if, you know, Homo sapiens from the different side tended to hunt larger animals, and maybe these Neanderthals a bit smaller animals, but it's very, very preliminary. Maybe when we have more bones, everything will change. Ochre we find, of course, because it's Homo sapiens, some of the shells. And this is just to summarize the confusion. We have Homo sapienses, we have Neanderthals. There are many occasions where they could have interbred and met. We don't know. You were saying about, and I take your remark, the 55-46 humid event. We said it was initial Upper Paleolithic. It could be late Mousterian. Manot actually is a minimum age of 55, whatever it means. Minimum age means it could be 100. We don't know. We have to look at the dates and listen to what they tell us. Sometimes it's a date, sometimes we just don't know. And we have to acknowledge that. And another cautionary thing, I just did a trick. I looked at the ages of the 11 people found at Schul, and I kind of added them to a sum. If they bury one another, okay, they didn't die together, they amount to 275 years out of 150,000 years of this late Middle Paleolithic. It's ridiculous. Now, the one wasn't dated, so let's say he lived to 50. Okay, so it's 325. And maybe there was one who lived to 100 and buried them all. It's another 400 because somebody had to bury them. It's nothing. We just don't know. In Tabun, it would be 65 years altogether. It's much more than in any other place of the world, but we don't know. And it's nice, it's important, it's exciting. People say that skeletons bring life to the excavation. We know that. They bring money to the excavation. It's important. But it's very, very partial. We don't know. We just don't know. So, again, I think we're researchers, and we're also kind of, I am, again, a storyteller. And it's our new year, so, many human remains for everybody. And just talking about heritage, this lady came with 11 grandchildren to Misliya. And the one who was 3 years was the most interested. So there is a way of getting people engaged. And when they're old age, you know, maybe they'll give some money to the excavation. And, of course, we should acknowledge. And I bet I forgot some of the people. You know, prehistoric people went in groups. We have the same groups. We are kind of mirror imaging the people we are researching. They had hunters and gatherers and painters, whatever, and we have experts for hunting, we have experts for gathering. We are kind of working with them. So it's a group thing, and it's fun. And thank you very much.